Welcome, everyone. As everybody gets set up and joining us on our Fundamentals for Startup today, I wanted to welcome you all. And while we wait for everyone to log in for the meeting, I'm going to make a few announcements. I'm Caroline Hansen. I'm the event manager for CoMotion Labs. And today is our last Fundamentals for Startup until October. As we get closer to fall, we'll know more and more about what those events will look like at the time, whether they're online or in person. So just watch your email for updates and schedules. All of our Fundamentals for Startup presentations are archived on our CoMotion website under labs/startup training videos. We have covered a variety of topics over the past several years. So if you find yourself with some free time on your hands, check out our past talks. For our full schedule and to register for the fall fundamentals, please visit comotion.uw.edu/events. Today, Christina Hyuka is here to discuss Innovativeness, Flourishing or Withering, how to keep the heart of innovation beating strong. What propels leadership coach and adjunct instructor at UW-Bothell, Christina, to think, write, and coach about innovation leadership is the existential crisis of our life on Earth. Her hope is to see as many organizations as possible to be successful in innovating solutions to the world's most wicked problems. She wants every team who has the will to be innovative and turn that will into life-enhancing solutions that we will all benefit from. Christina works with leaders who care about maximizing their positive impact on the planet and recognize that innovation is the main driver to maintain growth and profitable relevance. Christina helps companies expand their approach to innovation from focusing on just technological solutions to creating an environment that unleashes an organization's capacity and human potential to innovate. She does this by assessing and applying leadership psychology, interpersonal dynamics, and skills that deepen the innovation process. Christina will take all questions via chat at the end of the talk, and I will now turn the event over to Christina. Welcome.
Hey, thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here, and I'm delighted that we have people here joining us. And you know that you are in the right place if you are a business leader or especially a startup leader who may be struggling to maintain the energy that it takes to keep the flame of innovation burning without burning yourself out. So it's kind of universally accepted and agreed that business leaders among business leaders that staying in business and sustaining business, it is essential to innovate. Even the management guru, famous Peter Drucker, said this, that business is only two functions, marketing and innovating. And since we are living in this really wild, crazy time of the pandemic, I would like to know from you, and Caroline, if you can check the chat when I'm asking this question, that what has life served you at this particular time? Have you been focusing on marketing or innovating or neither? What's been going on during this last couple of months when we've been dealing with this heart-wrenching, economy-wrenching, quite the unknown period in our lives? How has your business been doing? If you have anyone in the chat box, which I can't see, can you give me some of the feedback?
We've got someone said they haven't focused on either of them.
Mm-hmm.
And
maybe just focused on several Zoom calls a day.
Right. Someone else said both is what they've been focused on.
Good, good. Well, that's just to get us all on the same page here. And I still would like you to think about, not to answer to me or publicly here, but to using this scale from 0 to 10 to kind of reflect a little bit where you are on the scale of flourishing in innovation. How is your organization doing right now? Kind of in the dead zone, or so-and-so a little bit, not so much, maybe, or are you absolutely embracing this time as being your time to innovate? So just to think about how that is affecting your business right now. And because this is an interesting time, there could be a real impact of the circumstances. But if you find yourself in the sort of the lower end of this scale and more on the apathy side of things, you are not alone, because for years now, it has been shown that most senior leaders are not happy with the innovation performance of their companies. There's been, McKenzie has been looking into this for years now, and especially this, this particular research has held true ever since there we go, oops, I'm just going too fast here. So since 2007. So it's really just a testament to how hard it is to keep that heart for innovation beating. It does become very complex after the first excitement when you have your invention and you want to change the world. So talking about what is an innovator? How do you then actually become one? And there are people who think that any one of us could be an innovator if we just unleash our inner innovator. And I politely want to disagree with that. I think good ideas are key to innovations, but they don't make us innovator. Just because we just saw how hard it is to be satisfied with the innovation performance, I believe that good ideas make people highly imaginative, and we need those imaginative people, that talent who is imaginative, who can come up with good ideas. But that does not make us yet innovators. And I give you an example of that. It was in late 1980s when on my way from work to home, I was talking to a colleague and I said, hey, wouldn't it be just pretty darn amazing if I could have eyeglasses that I could watch movies with just in my own privacy? Now, a decade plus after, I'm going to my dentist here in Bellevue, and she hands me this headset and said, Christina, why don't you just watch a movie while I fix your crown? I was an imaginative young woman, whereas there was a company who was working hard to innovate on this same idea. And of course, now in modern times, we have Google Classes. We've gone through that experiment, and we are in the middle of these VR headset innovations. So these companies are innovators. They actually work hard from the idea to the finished product and keep working on that to make that better and better. Now, because so many senior executives keep perennially be dissatisfied with the innovation performance, it is because it is so complex and so hard. And there are many obstacles that show up for people in these companies and in these processes. So let's look at some of the reasons what blocks someone from innovating. First of all, what keeps showing up is turf wars. People work in their silos and argue over the resources for their projects. Internal politics. There are personal agendas, hidden agendas. There's backstabbing. There's misalignment of priorities. We are driven to different directions because of different priorities. We're not on the same page. Or the overall culture. We maybe have a slogan that talks about innovation, but it's not really in the practice. Or simply lack of money. So Caroline, if you can now help me build up a poll, I'd love to hear back from our audience members. What are the 2 things out of this list that you have come across or have had show up as obstacles in your organization? We'll give you a couple of seconds time to fill out that poll. And we get anyone responding to that. What kind of experiences have you had? What holds you back? What blocks you from innovating? Any one of these?
Results are coming in. Let's take another 10 seconds.
All right. And choose 2.
The system might only let them choose 1. So
okay.
Just as I'm observing. All right.
Okay. Let's see what we've got here. Misalignment and lack of budget. Very interesting. Turf wars at 8%, internal politics 17, misalignment 23, culture just down to 8, and lack of budget 33. So thank you for that. That's great. I'm going to show you what research shows, how that compares to this latest report by KPMG. Perennially, year after year, it seems like these 3 up on the top, turf wars, internal politics, and misalignment, seem to be the ones that most people experience, especially in this survey that they did amongst 215 companies. And culture and budget came thereafter. The lack of budget seems to be typical in early stage startups. And in this group, probably we have more of those. Misalignment, just not being on the same page. And when you think about the 3 up top here, they are all about people kind of getting along, understanding each other, getting on the same page. So it's a people problem. So thank you for that. And before we go any further, I think we need to pause and talk about what is innovation. How do we actually, what is it that we are talking about here anyway? As a leadership coach, I had to kind of really put my thinking cap on and ask people, interview people, to really try to understand where my clients actually work. What is their space? What's their mindset? And what is this innovative company actually doing? And what's happening there? What does that innovation look like? So to me, innovation is an outcome. And here's my definition of the process. And I had to make this up myself because there is no single shared, agreed upon definition of innovation. So here is mine. it starts with those imaginative people, that talent that has that great idea, but it needs to be prototyped. It needs to be put into use somehow. And there's no sole isolated innovator in this world who comes up with an invention and then never shares it with anyone. Then it's not an innovation. It's just an invention that somebody holds dear to their, or it's a secret. It only becomes innovation when it's shared, and truly an innovation when it scales. And that's, of course, the golden egg. That's what everybody is aiming for in their startups. And then, of course, once you get more established in the marketplace, you need to work on sustaining that position in the marketplace until someone else disrupts you and takes over that. But that innovation is that innovative process results in an innovation that hopefully makes our lives and our work better in some way. So this all became very important to me as a coach, and you might wonder, why would I care? I care because I worked with amazing group of leaders over the years, and I was invited to many innovation summit and conferences to attend, and to see that on the stage we hardly ever saw women, and it was very pale and male conferences that typically in the 2000s, mid-2000s, I attended. And it kind of ticked me off, and it made me want to create an innovation summit to highlight women and their creative solutions to world's biggest problems in all different sectors of life. And you know, it was really interesting that when I asked people, who are the women innovators that you know, I only seem to get one single answer. And most people told me about Marie Curie, but she already passed away in 1934. She became a Nobel Prize winner, but you know, we live in the 2000s, and there are so many other innovators that I wanted to highlight that. I've still, since that time, been involved in various innovation summits to bring in different perspectives and aspects of innovation to the stage and to be highlighted. And right now I'm working on this one, which you might be interested in joining. It's a free summit around Nordic innovation here, and we're running it from the Nordic Museum. So one of the attendees in that conference talked to me about her invention. She said, "I never became an innovator, just like Sara Blakely, the founder of Spanx. What I have done for years is to cut my pantyhose so that I have a controlled top, and my skirts and my pants are all smooth. And I've done that in my own privacy. But it was Sara Blakely who shared her invention, took it to the world, scaled it, and became the world's youngest female billionaire, self-made billionaire. So it takes sharing to become one. Now, working with both men and women leaders and innovators, we all have used different ways of framing what it is, what's going on in this chaotic and very complex undertaking. And we've seen, and maybe you've used some of these frameworks in order to kind of get a handle on what's going on. And all of this they're great, and they help you think through what's happening and what needs to be taken into account and consideration when going through this very difficult process. Now, all this is great, but when I saw this curve, I realized something truly important that is almost like hidden in plain sight. This story, this startup curve, have been shown to you many a time, probably.
You want some of these?
And maybe we can mute some of the, okay, there we go. And it's not just a startup curve where we have an idea and excitement around around an invention and then taking it through to scale. And what is so valuable in this is that piece that was added to it with the tongue-in-cheek, like this emotional side of things. Like this is being kind of a little bit of a joke that you first start with happiness and then you are so isolated that you are basically in the valley of desperation. Without any social life, you are depressed and you're working so hard, and it's a very lonely kind of wondering whether this is all worth it. And when I was looking at this, I realized that it is all of these different frameworks up till now are actually focused on everything else but that emotion. And when I'm working with these leaders and these innovative teams, I realize that everything hinges on those emotions, how people actually feel. It's the underlying layer that never really gets to be spoken about, but it's there impacting the energy and the way people actually innovate, and whether they have the sustaining power, the sustaining energy to keep at it, to have that will. So I realized that my role as a coach in supporting these innovators is to help the leaders to cultivate innovativeness within their teams, within themselves, and within their teams. And for this innovativeness, and I'm going to go and explore that and unpack that for you a little bit more, but it's important to understand that throughout this, there is that underlaying charge of emotions that are affecting everything that innovation is about, and especially in that process of innovating. So the 6 C's that kind of emerged in my interviews and in my working with these people made it much more clear how to get my hands on how to help people stay innovative and how to bring it up and work with that and expand that, rather than, you know, accept that valley of desperation and fear and sort of a chaotic emotional space where lots of people fall into. So let me now actually show you what I came up with, what actually emerged in all of this process. In order to keep your innovativeness burning, that flame burning, we need to start from the very beginning, from the seed, which is the curiosity. It's the seed of all human progress. Without curiosity, without somebody asking why not, what if, we really don't move forward. If you remember the movie The Hobbit, Gandalf or Bilbo Baggins asked Gandalf at one point, like, you asking me to go on this enormously dangerous sounding trip or journey, but is there any kind of guarantees that I will come back? And Gandalf says, no, there's no guarantees for you to come back, but I will guarantee you that if you will come back, you will come back changed. So I think of that as a metaphor for curiosity. It's a quality of the brave. And that takes us to courage. Courage to create. Every innovator, inventor, every business leader, every entrepreneur comes face to face with this risk every single day in some form or another. How do I get through the fear of failure? How do I assess this risk that's involved in creating something that hasn't been done before, something new? And the third C is communication. Just like in the definition that I shared with you, I realized that without people being able to share what they want to share with the world, it's not going to go anywhere. Whether the communication skills are skills internally within your team, within your group, or externally in telling your narrative in a compelling way, involving your community, your society in that story. It's a never-ending skill set, and you're never done with communication. It's always part of this energy that needs to be stoked to grow and be better. And from there, we go to the fourth C, the fourth C, naturally from communication, collaboration. Because like I said, the innovation is not something that's born out of isolation. It's always a group effort. You have to have a team to move it forward, to collaborate and co-create with you. I actually thought about calling this co-create, but then we would miss something that is really core to this whole concept of collaboration, which is the word labor that's inside of this word. Because collaboration is not easy. If collaboration and communication were easy, every business venture would succeed. You know, it's in collaboration or in communication where the biggest mistakes, misunderstandings happen, and where the energy withers. If you are not collaborating in a way that's inclusive and safe and creates an environment where we actually are willing to put that discretionary effort in, you're not going to go very far. It's going to be hard to succeed. And in today's companies, I believe that every company needs to be strategically building their collective intelligence. There needs to be different ways of making sure that knowledge builds, that we have either crowdsourcing platforms that are easy to use, that people are willing to contribute to, that the threshold to participate in bringing people's information into this big knowledge base is is constantly developing. And you know, how do you talk to your customer? How do you get the feedback so that you can tweak and develop your product or your service, and constantly be developing it? Okay, and then finally we get to the sixth C, whoops, which is culture. And culture, of course, is largely invisible. You know, the assumptions, the thinking, the beliefs that are underneath that we can't really touch, but also the symbols, the way we talk, the way we reward people for their innovative efforts, different artifacts that are symbolic to appreciating and valuing innovation in our culture. So taking it from being just a slogan for supporting that we are all about innovation to actually practicing it in our reward system, in our way we talk, how we behave, and practice innovation. So how about we take a little pause here, and if there are questions or comments, we could take a look at those for a little bit before we end.
Christina, I have a question here. What do you think about innovation being monopolized? For example, you're being innovative, but then here comes the big money, or IP lawyers or big companies take over, like Amazon, Microsoft. So innovation is hijacked. How do you navigate and balance that?
Wow. I don't think there is one answer to that. Innovation is always a scary place to play. Somebody always has more power, more money. Yet, if people didn't do it, if you were not quick enough, nimble enough, agile enough to go after what you believe would be your disruption, we would not see these disruptive new technologies that come, sometimes we feel like, out of the left field, so to speak. So that takes us to that wild place where Gandalf was inviting Bilbo Baggins to, that adventure that you never know if you will return, and if you will return as a winner, or if somebody else wins over you. So that's the name of the game, I guess. Sorry, I don't have anything better to say about that.
We have another question. What is your take on innovating human rights? For example, comprehensive health care should not be tied to employment, free health care for all. Your thoughts on that?
Can you say that again in the beginning?
It's what is your take on innovating human rights? That's the question as listed.
Well, to me, this whole space of innovation is about being human. And at its core, it's about really embracing that humanness, what it is to be human. And if you think about what I talked about, collaboration and courage to create, it actually is driving us to recognize what it is to be fully human. If you really create safe places for everyone to be those imaginative, innovative people, truly themselves, that in itself is a celebration or a foundation or a container that keeps building human rights. So at a sort of a philosophical level, we are actually, the more people work on building a better, safer work environment, the more they actually are creating better rights for all human beings. So absolutely possible to make this world more humane and more human if you focus on these 6 C's. That's what I think.
Those are all the questions we have at this point.
Okay. Thank you for those. Because I realized that all these 6 C's are integral for an innovator, for innovative companies to balance with and work with at all times simultaneously. They are also always informed by and affected by emotions. And since I've never worked with robots, I don't know how innovative company that might be, but as long as I'm working, I've worked with humans, the human brain has these core systems: emotion, feeling, cognition, and self-control. And that's kind of like the playbook that we need to take into consideration here. So for as long as we've been working, as long as I've been working with human beings, I always remind my clients that it is the emotions that hit you first. However, brainy and smart you might be, the cognition, the rational part of you, only comes after you have reacted with emotion that then lends to feeling something. So that emotion is so deeply grained into our limbic system, our reptile brain. It's where we are triggered first. And the prefrontal cortex that developed last, that's when we are trying to make sense of everything and put the emotion in its place. And then as adults, we have this self-control system that is trying to regulate what we do with the emotions and how we end up then making rational choices or decisions. And so in business and at workplaces, we usually do not want to take time for playing in this area of emotions and feelings. So we skip over them as if people would leave their emotions at the door, or I don't know, outside of the Zoom, outside of the laptop screen. Emotions are there all the time, and we get triggered by whatever someone says. It can be a word, it can be an event, it can be a physical circumstance, or just a memory of something that makes your heart beat or hand sweat or what have you. So to recognize that the emotions are actually affecting everything we think we are then smart about is the first thing. Just the recognition and awareness of that, and maybe even acknowledging that at some point. So I consider this emotion the energy that puts everything in motion. And here's another way of looking at the model that I just kind of gave you an overview with of. So you can, just to, I showed you that heart that had all these 6 C's in it. This is another way of conceptualizing it, so that they are all almost like Russian dolls. They are all present at the same time. And at the core of our innovativeness, there's that curiosity and courage and communication, collaboration, collective intelligence, and then the culture that's more expansive to the externally and the community and outwards. And at all times, there's that emotional charge that then informs and perfumes each one of these. Now, innovation is never a linear, just like in that curve. That process is not quite the COVID curve, but it's that wiggly line. But it's mostly that because of the fact that it's a conversation. It's relational. To me, this whole innovativeness, that human quality of being innovative, is about understanding the emotional and the relational influences at all times. And so this is how I would like to kind of squeeze all of this into this flame, all of the brain's 4 core systems, from emotion, feeling, cognition, self-control, into that flame to be present. So it gets complicated, and it's not. And the way how I'd like you to think about this is as a conversation that you can have with yourself or with your team members. And you can start out with these 6 C's. And I would love to see what you think about having these conversations. So first of all, the asking yourself, how am I driven by my curiosity? How are people in your organization driven by curiosity? How does curiosity look like in our organization? What is considered a good question? Are we allowing those who have power to be questioned? Are we more energized by having more questions than answers? What about courage to create? Do we have? Where do we stop? What's too risky? What's too much? Where do we encounter fear? How does fear show up? And how do we move on anyways? Who do we turn to? Or what do we do in order to create that stamina, that perseverance, that determination to move forward in spite of the fear we feel? What needs to be in place for all of us to move forward together and still be able to create what we need to create. And then how about communication? Are we skilled enough to talk to each other and keep each other in the loop while everything is moving fast and there's all these pressures? How are we getting better at it so that we can be we misunderstand each other less and are on the same page more? How quickly can we talk about what we are doing in a way that piques interest or communicates how we are transforming the world? What's our skill level there? And the collaboration piece, how are we taking into consideration all diverse perspectives? How do we create safe environment for everybody to participate, all voices to be heard? And how is collaborative team effort rewarded over individuals? Is there a way how we can show up more as a team than somebody taking credit for themselves? And then the collective intelligence. How easy do we make it for people to participate and give us feedback and help us be better? How do we create an environment where people are willing to contribute to our betterment? And how quickly can we turn that information into a better product, a better service? Are the tools up to date? They are easy for people to use. And then how is innovation then weaved into the whole fabric of our culture so that it's not just an idea, but it's actually in practice and it shows up the way we do things all the way through. So those are the kinds of questions that you can have in a conversation with yourself or with your partners and your co-workers. And at the same time, at each step, how are our emotions either helping our movement, our process, our work together, or are they actually becoming an obstacle? Are they holding us back? Emotions that are not recognized, affecting the quality of our innovativeness. So that's where I see an opportunity for each one of you as individuals or as teams and partnerships to have this conversation for flourishing your innovativeness more. Caroline, are there any questions at this point?
Yes, I have a question from Kiara. She says, I'm having a little trouble with consistency. Do you have any tips on how to remain courageous and curious when you may be experiencing burnout?
Consistency in, I'm trying to connect the dots here. Consistency with working, staying in curiosity and courage when you are in burnout. That's what
it sounds like, yes.
Okay. Yes. Where I would start is to get really curious about what your burnout is all about. and having curiosity around it, not stopping at like, well, I just don't have time. I have too much to do. Well, look into why is that? What would you do differently if you had the time or if you had the support? And then start building that understanding of what is the reality that you have created. Oftentimes, when you are in burnout, it's really hard to start seeing the limiting guardrails that you have kind of created in your own mind, that you're doing everything you can and there's no other way. And a conversation with someone who's asking you these questions, although it might be annoying to you, but it can really open your mind to think about where you actually are and how you kind of closed your box into thinking that this is how it can only be, could be helpful. And the courage comes from not doing it alone. When you see that there is actually help if you ask for help, but that already takes courage. It's not easy to ask for help when you think that you should be leading this effort, and you need to kind of show the way here and do the most of the work. So my heart goes out to you. It's not the end of the world, because there is a way out. And it starts with that being curious about what you are experiencing. But if you don't get anywhere doing the curiosity piece yourself, turn to someone who you trust, who can explore that with you, because then you can start seeing what's limiting you to keeping you in that place. I hope that helps. Caroline?
Those are all the questions for right now. If there are any more, please feel free to send them via chat.
All right. Thank you for that. So, so for me, actually, I would like to just say that each one of you, I hope, can now take these 6 C's and have that conversation with yourself or with somebody else, hopefully, starting from curiosity and seeing what does it mean to be curious in this organization, in our effort, on our team, so that you can start supporting each other's 6 C's as individuals, but also to create a culture of innovation by having a conversation around each one of these. So that it's not just an idea and you are not doing it alone, but recognizing that throughout all of this, there's the emotional piece that needs to be recognized, that we are all impacted by it, but also to be acknowledged. And how do we create that space for the emotions to be okay? And if you try to do this whole piece in isolation, you won't get very far. Our brains are created to be socially connected, even if we are physically distanced. we move forward only by keeping that flame of innovativeness burning without burning yourself out, by being relational and accepting the emotional part of our lives, even when we are at work. So I would finish by saying that the world thanks you for innovating, and me too. And if there's any part of this that anyone would like to explore some more, I'd be happy to just go a little bit deeper and explore any single one of these pieces, because each one of these 6 C's could be a project of its own. It could be something that could be explored in a coaching model, or it could have parts that are training and peer coaching and exploration, just as well as you are doing launching your product or service out to the world. Don't forget that it's the human beings who are doing this. As long as we don't have the robots doing the work, we need help in developing that heart that keeps beating, and keeps us working towards getting that out there in the world, so that you don't burn out in the middle of it, and you don't let everything fall apart, but you stay the course. And for that, you need the energy that comes from recognizing that there is an inner peace that you need to nurture as well and cultivate. So if we had another week to do sessions, we could go through each one of these 6 C's and see what they would mean for you personally, as well as for your team and your organization as a whole. But as of now, I hope this will be a helpful kind of tool to propel you further and keep you excited to do what you actually do. You're good at it, and the world needs you.
Thank you very much, Christina, for your time and expertise on this subject. The chats are filled with thank yous to you, so thank you for that. Thank you everyone for attending today and spending part of your Friday with us, and we appreciate it. And as I said, we will be on a mailing list to know when our fundamentals begins up again in the fall. So be safe these next few months. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you very much.